Welcome, everybody, to another rendition of The Lone Wolf Show. I'm the Lone Wolf, and backstage, I got a real special guest, the prestigious A.C. Fisher-Aldag, prestigious Llewellyn author to boot. A.C., how are you?
Great. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm sitting here in Southern Oregon at what is now Haven Temple, and I am looking forward to a great interview and getting to know about you and your spirituality and your writings and your involvement within the pagan community.
Well, thank you. It looks like it's absolutely beautiful there, Harold.
It definitely is. And the seasons change so beautifully, and they change, and the temperature and the climate is just like my home state of New Hampshire.
Ah, very pretty.
So, AC, you are a Llewellyn author. Can you tell me about your publications with Llewellyn?
Well, I only have the one currently, although I do some of their almanacs and periodicals as well as the book. And the book is called Common Magic. Hang on a second. I will grab it for us. Probably going to come out backwards, right? This is Common Magic, and it is about the witchcraft and magical systems of the common people from the British Isles. And that includes England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, the Isle of Man, and the coast of France, which is kind of honorary British because a lot of people fled there when the Anglo Saxons came in. So they have a lot of the same folklore and folk traditions. So it's a little different than Wicca. It might be kind of different from what you guys are used to, but it's a lot of fun and it's very magical and very oriented with nature and very spiritual.
What is folk magic?
Folk magic was that which was done by the common people, working class people, ordinary folks, and it used a lot of natural materials. It didn't have a lot to do with literature, like the stories about the gods, maybe from Greece or the Norse gods. It was more like local deities and spirits, fairies, and spirits that lived in the wells, spirits that lived in the woods, and it was using just ordinary implements like farm tools and things like that to do magic with. They didn't have the money to go out and buy a really fancy wand or athame, so they used what was on hand, like a pitchfork or the besom, the broom, came from that tradition.
So you said tradition is, and it's based on British folk magic.
Mhm. There are many, many different traditions in the British Isles. Um, from each of the nations, as well as from everyone that has ever moved there, including the Romans and the Anglo Saxons, all have contributed to it, and everybody is kind of meshed together. And then it was brought here to America and meshed with other populations of immigrants that came here, as well as the Native American people that were here and enslaved workers. So the traditions in America are quite a bit different than those that are in Britain, but you can see commonalities and common roots.
Does folk magic exist in America?
Yes, yes, there's a lot of different types of folk magic in America. There's a lot in Appalachia, there's a lot in the South. There's hoodoo and voodoo traditions from the descendants of enslaved workers. And there's other types of folk magic that came from around the world, all here in America. So this is just from Britain. It's no better or no worse or than anybody else's. It might be a little bit different. The commonalities, it was all done by common people, and it was all done with not a lot of money, not a lot of fancy tools.
Mhm.
And it was for mostly things that affect people on a day to day existence. It wasn't like a lot of lofty communication with um, angelic beings, for example. It was more about communication with the local nature spirits and doing things that people needed, like love, money, food, um, health, getting along with the environment, doing things with the weather, farming, skilled trades, things like that.
How does one get in touch with the local nature spirits?
Well, there are nature spirits everywhere, Harold. You know, there's some in your backyard there, I'm certain. Um, just go out and talk to the trees, sit and listen mindfully and hear their voices, make offerings. We have a little pond beyond our house, and we were having a lot of trouble with water, like water beds breaking and plumbing that didn't work, and things breaking down that had to do with water. So we went out there and made nice offerings of food and beer to the spirits that lived near the well, and sang them songs and asked them if they wanted anything, and just listened to them, and bingo, all our water problems resolved themselves.
What's a good way to talk to the spirits of any particular tree?
Well, we have a tradition where we take ribbons and we tie them onto the tree branches. Let me see if I can go up without giving everybody vertigo. Right here, this is a branch with a lot of ribbons tied to it. And people do this tradition to make wishes and honor the spirits that live in the trees. And all over Britain, all over the British Isles, there are things called clootie trees or wishing trees, where people go out and they tie a ribbon to the tree. If they have a wound, they might take a piece of cloth and wash the wound with it and then tie it onto the tree. And as the cloth rots and falls apart, the wish is granted or the wound is healed. So that's one of the ways of communicating with the trees. And another way is just to sit and with your back against the tree and close your eyes and just listen to the wind of the trees.
The first thing that comes to mind with like wishing, like a wishing well,
Yeah.
right? So is within folk magic. I mean, there's, I mean, there must be like a lot of different stories that have been told, or and maybe locations in the old country about wishing wells.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
how does a wishing well like become empowered?
They just are. Some of these have been in use by humans since before the Roman times. People have excavated them to pull some of the votive offerings out of them and found stuff from before Roman times that were tossed into the well, coins and bent pins and things like that. There are wells named after Christian saints as well as pagan deities and entities like Madrone, if you've ever heard of the Aben or Maubin, Mabon story of Mabon, son of Madrone. There is a Modron's or Modrone's well in Cornwall, which is another British principality, that is still in use today. It's still getting votive offerings. It's been dedicated now to Saint Madrone, but this story is much, much older, and these sacred sites still exist. There's dozens of lady wells named after the goddess or the Virgin Mary. There's dozens of wells dedicated to Bridget or Breed or Saint Bridget. So the spirits inhabit the well. People venerate them. People do things to make wishes and to honor them and to speak to them and venerate them, all the way from Christian people to pagan people in the old times and the pagan revivals nowadays.
So in the scope of like folk magic, I mean, is that it seems, I mean, is it a form of paganism, you'd say? Is it a
Yeah.
form of paganism, folk magic?
I would definitely say it's a form of paganism, and I define paganism as pre-Christian spirituality, pre-Christian religions, pre-Christian, pre-Muslim, older religions that have existed since the beginning of time. I mean, there's images of some of the pagan deities like Cernunnos, or we call him the Bucca, um, from rock art that is 30,000 years old. And they, people say, well, he's just a Gallic deity. There's images of Cernunnos all over the world. They may call him by different names, but there's a stag lord, a huntsman, that sort of deity, every place in the world, and there's quite a few images of him in the British Isles. They, I'm going to kind of segue here into folk plays. I'll tell you what that is in a second. But they found in a place called Starcar in northeastern Britain all these things that were like little helmets made out of antlers in the front part of a deer's skull, and they had little things to tie it on your head so you could pretend to be a deer. And we believe that they use that to invoke the Bucca or Hearn or Cernunnos. Um, and doing something like that is called a folk play or ritual theater, ritual drama, psychodrama. It's all pretty much the same thing. Some of those are still being performed today, and you can see them on YouTube and on other media. You can go over there to the British Isles and watch these um, folk plays being enacted. So the ones related to Cernunnos are probably the oldest.
What do you think, putting antlers on your head, the whole act in itself, where do you think it came from, and why did they do it?
Well, I think originally it was a hunting ceremony. They were trying to attract the deer to them for hunting purposes, but it was also to align yourself with that entity, with that deity. We do something that this word was borrowed from the Hindu people of India, and that's called avataring. And hoodoo people in the American South do the same thing, where you open yourself up and you let a deity or an entity inhabit you. And in the hoodoo, it's called being ridden. The entity rides you, but you kind of check out, and the deity kind of takes over. It's a very profound experience. So it's one where you somewhat unite with the god, the deity. You let them work through you. Not
Does
all
that
folk magic practices do that, but mine does.
does that have anything to do with shape shifting?
Somewhat, somewhat. People may believe that they see the entity coming over the person. Um, the shape shifting that I believe in is more like a consciousness with some other being rather than you're actually physically changing form. And speaking of Cernunnos, I got to show you my. This is called a stang. Hang on a second. I got to figure out how I'm going to get it into the camera because it's really quite tall without smashing anything. Okay. I'm already losing pieces off of it. There we go. This is called a stang, and it is antlers on top of a staff. And people can also use a fork staff. I'm dropping a lot of stuff off of it because I have them tied on here with this the red string, and you can see it's duct tape because we're kind of rednecks, so our antlers broke and we duct taped them back together. But the let's see if I can put that up there. The antlers on the staff, called a stang, was used in British traditional witchcraft and in old-fashioned folk magic to invoke and summon the god, and also to create a sacred space with. So I'm going to put him back before I drop any more of the stuff off of him. Oh, don't fall over. There we go. Okay. And I lost my little crow feathers off of there, so I got to put those back. There's a crow and a seagull that kind of is opposites. And there's also other things dangling from that, like crystals and rooster spurs and things like that. And they all have some sort of purpose, some sort of meaning within folk magic. There you go.
So do you cast a circle with that thing?
Well, that's not something we really do. British traditional witchcraft casts circle, but we don't. And a lot of the reason is when you're doing a folk play, a lot of them are dances, or you're running down the street, or you're going in and out of pubs, or you're on the town square, and you can't really cast a circle when you're doing something like that. We do that for like individual magic done at home, like for a healing. Or if you're doing something around a spring, or if you're doing something around a tree, it's really hard to cast a circle. So that's not something that was traditionally ours. I can do it, I don't do it well. Um, the stang itself, you'd kind of stand there and hold it, and then it, like, the energy kind of pulls up from the ground and comes down from the sky and creates like an umbrella around you.
Hmm.
So that's how the protective is. But mostly when we do protective things, we use things, talismans, like these necklaces and my little bird's foot, or we carry something in our pocket that is a talismanic item to try and um, keep the nasty stuff at bay, rather than casting a circle. And we do more of an immediate kind of magic, where at casting circle, you gather up the magic and make a cone of power and release it. We kind of more do, um, when we do the folk plays, it's more like, you, let me see how to put this. Something that happened before, say a good harvest or a really good growth season, your garden doing really, really well, you would do a ritual action to make that happen again. Or if you're doing healing, you would more do laying on of hands, which is more immediate rather than sending energy off through the air, which is more what casting circle does and the cone of power does. So it's just different ways of doing magic. It's pretty much got the same result.
And everything you're describing is this what's called European shamanism?
Well, it has ties to shamanism. Shamanism is more like, communicating with the land, communicating with the animals directly, and using those energies to heal. It's more earth energies. It's more, traveling between the worlds, traveling in, like the etheric world, and gathering knowledge and gathering energy that way, and making journeys and communicating with spirits that way. So that's not something I myself do. My husband does that. He was trained in shamanism. Um, so yes, there are British Isles shamans, but it isn't really within the scope of what I personally do.
Mm-hmm.
I hear
As
your
far as
dog.
folk, as far in the background, yeah,
Yeah.
the southern hills of Oregon has many dogs, and they come in different sizes and
Oh.
and shapes. In the scope of folk magic, who's your who's because you said folk magic is also a tradition, and I find that intriguing. Does the folk magic traditions, do they have more than one? Are there many different traditions of
Oh,
folk
yes,
magic?
absolutely. As many as there are families, because they were often handed down through families or to like the neighborhood children. Elders taught younger people. It was more so than like how Wicca does, um, where you have a high priestess that teaches people within a coven, and they can be of all different ages and backgrounds. This would be more passed down through, um, younger people. My children are very involved, and now my grandchild has done one of the folk plays where you dress up as a deer and all the children chase him, and it's to bring about a good hunt. Um, he's done the Mari Floyd, which is where there is a dancing horse skull. That's done at Christmas time because nothing makes you think of Christmas and Yule than a dancing horse skull. That's an older Welsh tradition. So I'm passing these on to my younger generation as well as to interested people at festivals and in venues like here on Witchcraft TV, and just to some of my friends and neighbors that are interested in doing it. I attend a lot of festivals and gatherings and usually do one or more discussions about folk magic as well as trying out some folk plays. And it's those are just tremendous fun. They sometimes have really grim, serious subject matter, like a horse skull or like hunting a deer. But they were aimed at teaching children the culture, so they're also a lot of fun and noisy. They're very noisy. Lots of drumming involved and yelling and stomping your feet and singing songs.
Hmm. You said pagan gatherings, for
Mhm.
lack of a better word.
Well, pagan gatherings, conventions, festivals.
Conventions, festivals, outings, a place where like-minded people can chill for a while.
Yeah,
What is your favorite gathering of like minds?
oh, that's really hard to say because there's so many and they all have just great things about them. Indoors in February, there's Convocation, which is in the Metro Detroit, Ann Arbor area of Michigan. That's 4 days, and they've had some really fantastic guests. This year, they're going to have Priestess Stephanie Rose Bird and Christopher Penzak and some other people. It's very well organized. It's in a lovely hotel, and it's lots and lots of fun. Um, I, though, prefer outdoor gatherings, and I prefer small outdoor gatherings. So there's Our Haven at the very south end of Indiana, surrounded by beautiful streams and waterfalls, and it's just a lovely place. And I really like Pagan Pride Days. My favorite of those is Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Mhm.
That's a very wonderful Pagan Pride Day. It's going to have its, I think, 30th year next year. And that is a chance to meet pagan people from all over our region. And last year we had some Christians show up, and rather than being protesters, they wanted to learn. So that was really a nice experience.
That's really cool.
It is. I love pagan pride days. They're awesome.
Hmm. I could be wrong, but I think I've had one of the there's a priestess of Our Haven. I think I've interviewed her. I think I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure. Pretty sure. So, what do you have going on? Let's see. Everybody's kind of hunkering down because, well, here comes winter, close
Yeah,
enough.
right.
So, what are you going to be up to this winter?
Well, I'm going to be going to some pagan gatherings, but first we have to winterize our home. We have a small homestead, a hobby farm, or Tivin, as we call it in Cymraeg or Welsh language. And we have to do some winterizing activities, just preparing the outbuildings for winter and getting ready for that. But I'm also going to be attending Convocation in February and the Paganicon in Minneapolis in March, and WitchCon online in February. January, I'm just kind of taking the time off. I'm going to do some writing. I'm going to do some relaxing and spend some time with my family. And we also need to plan our garden for next year. We do seed catalogs and figure out, what companion plants go with what other ones and where we're going to plant everything.
Hmm. Well, hey, I understand the whole concept of like labels and the different skins that people wear. Um, and that's a whole nother topic for
Right.
discussion maybe another time. But in the scope of like folk magic, what would one in a pagan community call someone who practices or lives folk magic? What's the term? What's the
Well,
label or skin?
some people accept the term witch, and I don't have a problem with that. It's just in a different language than my ancestors spoke. So I'm a Gorak, which is witch in Cymraeg language. and I'm jokingly called the Swamp Witch, but it would just be a folk magic practitioner. You know, some people call them grandma or grandpa, and some people call them a priest or a priestess. I think that's a little formal because we're way less formal than Wicca or ceremonial magic. So we don't really have a specific title. You know, a lot of the neighbor kids call me and my husband grandpa and grandma.
Mhm. That's ad- adorable. I like it.
Thank you.
So, historically, people that practiced ceremonial magicians were of wealthy people,
Mhm.
more so.
Wealthy and educated, and our people were mostly the peasants. Seriously, they were the people doing the farming, making the shoes, making the candles, staying at home with the kids. Whereas the high magicians or the ceremonial magicians were of a more educated class. So ours is a little bit more accessible, but then again, it's not because it's hidden. And, you know, everybody knew who the village witch was, the village healer, but they weren't in the yellow pages. They weren't like advertising online, hey, I'm a witch, come here, but everybody kind of just knew who they were.
So you're going to do some writing in January, you said.
I am.
What are you going to be writing about?
Well, I have two fiction books coming out from City Owl Press in New York, and they're about if Celtic people had come here to America in the 1600s and completely held their culture, including polyamory and the use of magic and sword fighting, and they obviously aren't going to get along too terribly well with American culture. So they asked somebody to come, they asked the gods to have somebody come and help them to incorporate themselves with American culture better. So they stop getting like thrown in jail and fined for doing crazy stuff. And along comes a professor of anthropology who is a very stick in the mud sort of woman, very much a Karen. And she learns that she can do magic as well, which is a real culture shock for her. So I've written this series and it's called The Americelts. And the first one is called Woman Afraid of Water. And so I'm going to be working on those this winter, and they're coming out in 2026 from City Owl. And City Owl is not a pagan per se publisher. They are a mainstream fantasy, romantasy, science fiction. There's a lot of like fiction about werewolves and vampires and things like that. But they produce fiction that is appealing to pagan and Wiccan and witches folks that like to read fiction. And I'm also working on a very unique divination system with my husband and an artist called Will Gerard and a couple, three other people. And we are hoping to get this published sometime next year. So it's just in the rough draft stage now and preliminary sketches, but it's going to be really amazing. It's going to be a divination system that will incorporate tarot, runes, I Ching, and other types of divination, astrology, all together in one system that's very much in depth. So it's for very advanced readers.
Hmm.
I'm going to be pretty busy this winter.
So there's going to be all kinds of like occult correspondences involved in the different blends of divination, kind of into one system.
Absolutely. And it's called the Octoro. Octo like eight,
Mhm.
Tarot. So Dave has been my husband has been working on that for really long time, like since 2007. But he also had to do things like earn a living, so you know what that's like, right? So he's worked on that off and on, and now it's finally getting near finished. So we're really excited about that. I'm just helping him edit it and helping coordinate everything.
So, how do you say which in? Are you from a Welsh background?
Yeah, I'm was third generation American, but yes, I'm from a Welsh background. We call ourselves Kemra, the
Mm,
same way that like um, they used to be called Sioux Indians, but now they're taking their name back and Lakota. It's that kind of situation. So it's grok. It sounds kind of like a dog throwing up a hairball, but it's a kind of spooky, cool word. So I'm Gray's Gawk, which is a swamp witch.
and it has different skins, many different labels. You can call it, call it as you
Right.
will. What would be
There's
your
different words in all the different Celtic and European languages. There's something else in Cornish, something else in Scots, something else in Irish.
what would be your advice to a younger seeker that what wanted to explore, and you could tell that they're very passionate and that they're going to be around for a long time as seeker? What would be your advice to them?
I would say go outside. You know, you're outside in your beautiful yard, and surround yourself with nature. You can learn from other people. You can learn from books. You can attend events and learn there. But the most you're going to learn is going outside, just being in nature, being saturated with nature.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you would like, I can show you some of the folk magic items that I have, most of which come from nature.
It would
You
be
uh,
great.
you saw the stang and the deer antlers and some of the other little items that were tied onto it, and each of those had meaning. But I've got some other cool stuff here too. Okay, we will start with this is a railroad spike. And in the old days, they used to use mining pythons that they would drive into the side of the cliff. And they're made of iron and it's very rusty. You don't want to clean it off. Okay. Now, to get one of these, you can go someplace like Arts and Crafts, which is a um, very large pagan store here in Hartford, Michigan, nearby my house. Don't please go pull these out of the train tracks because we don't want to derail any trains.
That's right.
And you would place these in the corners of your room with the point toward the middle of the room. And that's one of the ways, instead of casting circle, that we would keep unwanted entities and creatures from invading your room. You can also drive them into the ground at the four corners of your house.
Ooh.
So hoodoo people use those as well. This is a raccoon jawbone, and it's still got the teeth on it, the pointy little teeth. And this would be if you wanted to be like really eloquent, say that you're going to go to court or you have to give a speech in front of a class, or if you're doing witchcraft TV, you'd want to have one of these to help you be a good speaker and eloquent.
The spirit of Hermes.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some acorns for wealth and abundance. I got all different kinds from all different kinds of oak trees.
Hmm.
Oh, and there's a beech nut too.
So acorns correspond with wealth, with
Wealth
wealth,
and abundance, yes, plenitude.
nature's gifts, right?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And of course, the strength of the oak. This is something that we do. This is from a hawthorn tree, and hawthorn trees are where fairies live, and it has a big spike on it. Native
Hmm.
American people, the people indigenous to this area, used to use these as sewing needles. And you would take a piece of red thread, and you could take two of these and bind them together and do crissy crossy with the red thread to make a talisman to protect your home. And the hawthorn is also to keep thieves out of your house. Okay, what else do I have here? Ordinary four-leaf clover. My son found this in the yard. I don't know if you can see it. There we go.
Hmm.
He found this in the yard when he was about 13 years old. Of course, the four-leaf clover is for good luck,
Yeah.
as is the horseshoe. You the horseshoe above the door. Fairies don't like iron. It keeps the fairies out of your house. I don't
Huh.
mind fairies as long as they're outside. They can do their little fairy thing, but when they come in the house, they do things like steal your car keys and tangle your hair all up. So you don't necessarily want them in the house. And these have these little things on it. That's just to hang it above the door. Um, this is from a small pony, real horse that was really worn, and it's worn out and discarded. You're supposed to use a shoe that's been thrown by a horse, and you keep it right side up so your luck doesn't spill out. So that's why people put the horseshoe in front of the door.
Do you think? Do you think people know that that's a form of magic, or do they just do it because it's what their grandparents did?
I think it's probably now they do it because it was something their grandparents did, and it's just a symbol of good luck. But that's where the legend came from. And also, it keeps the devil out, because the horse threw the shoe and it hit the devil in the forehead and left a mark there and made him run away from the house. That's a kind of a Christian and pagan tradition that was mixed together. This is a holy stone or hagstone. It's got a hole that goes all the way through it, and it was worn there by pressure and water. You can find these all over the shores of Lake Michigan. And they are for looking through to try and find an honest man. They are, you can see the fairies through them, and you also can put them up in the window to keep negative entities from coming into your home. You don't want to paint this or adorn it in any manner, carve it or put anything on it, except you can put a piece of leather or yarn through the hole to hang it up with if you want to. So a hagstone or a holy stone, there's lots and lots of lore about those. They can be found all over the place if you live in Michigan. I have some hawthorn berries that also came from the thorn bush. And the story about that is, there we go. They're little red berries. And you don't bring the blooms of the hawthorn into your house except on Beltane. And why is because the fairies don't like it. That's their special bush, and it's bad luck to bring the blooms in. But when they turn into berries, you can use these to flavor alcoholic beverages, and you can also eat them. So there's a legend about refusing gifts from the fairies. You don't want to do that. So I put a little plate out with food for them, and I came back the next day, and all these fairies were on the plate, but the food was gone. So they liked it. I showed you one of these. This was on my stang, but here's another one. I'll take it out of the plastic here. I have stuff in plastic because I have cats. And they would be on the floor or down the heater grate if I didn't put it on in plastic. This is a rooster spur. It comes out of the back of the rooster's leg behind his foot. It's like a big toenail, and it's sharp. And when the roosters fight one another, they go at it with these little spurs, and these can get huge. I mean, the one in my stang is pretty large. But when the rooster is made into chicken stew, you save the spur. And this is for protection. It's a really good thing for the male principle, male energy, because roosters do what roosters do. So it's good for a man to carry one of these, especially on his wedding night. And it's also a protection item. Okay, what else do I have? Are you afraid of snakes, Harold?
I don't attract snakes, luckily.
Okay. That's good.
I don't attract snakes, but I've met a snake priestess or two.
Oh, you probably don't mind them then. These are snake skins. I have a whole bag full of them because I have a woodshed, and they like to crawl into the woodshed and hibernate for the winter, and then they shed their skins in the spring. And what you want to do with these is you grind them up in your mortar and pestle, and you can sprinkle them across the door, across the windows, to keep negative energies out. And you can also use that in a situation where you need to be smart and wily and slippery like a snake, and get out of trouble and have snake qualities, that snake energy. So it's called snake powder. And then one last thing I want to show you. Okay, there are some people that say that Gerald Gardner made up the idea of an athame. And he
Okay.
got it from Indonesian people, and it was called by Akaris or Chris by Indonesian people. And that he just kind of made this up, and there was never an athame in folk magic or in witchcraft before he made it up. Well, this is a 500 plus year old athame that's been in my husband's family. And it actually was his older brother's, but his older brother did not have any children, and we did. So he passed it on to us. And the hilt is made of blackthorn, that's wood. And then this part right here is brass. And this part right here is copper, and this really sharp. These little things around the edges are also really sharp. So you got to be careful you don't cut yourself on it. And then there's more brass, and I don't know what kind of wood this is, but the blade itself is copper.
Mm-hmm.
And this is used the same way as witches or Wiccans use an athame.
It's pretty.
To point and direct energy
like
with. Yeah, I don't want to like shine it up. I could shine it up, but just like the railroad spike, the patina, the rust on it, gives it a lot of power. So this is very, very old. My insurance agent has conniption fits whenever I bring it to a gathering because it's probably worth a lot of money, and we often keep it in a safe deposit box. But it was just Samhain, so we took it out and used it for Samhain. And I have a friend who's another author called Nathan King, who does British traditional witchcraft. And he used this for ceremony. He has his own that he uses as well. But the British traditional witchcraft and Wiccans have a tradition of kissing the blade, okay? When they're doing magic, they kiss the blade to honor it. And I'm like, dude, do you know where that thing has been? You know, it's probably used to scale fish and, you know, clean people's fingernails, and you're kissing,
Right.
putting it on your mouth. Ah. So, but he didn't get sick from it. That's another. I wanna plug some other authors who do folk magic. One of them is Nathan King, and he has a book about the witch blood. And Keldon has a book about British traditional folk magic. Gemma Gary writes a lot about Cornish witchcraft.
Hmm.
And Michael Howard has an online folklore site. It's about Irish witchcraft and Irish traditions. Michael Howard was wait a second, witchcraft. Michael Fortune has the online site, and he does a lot with Christian folklore and Christian traditions, as well as witchcraft and pagan traditions. In a lot of British Isles, those have melded together and pretty seamlessly.
Would you say that folklore is an infusion of sympathetic magic?
Sympathetic magic just means that you are using something that is a symbol to attract something else.
Right.
So, yes, we do a lot of that. So some of the items that I showed you were for sympathetic magic because like attracts like also repels like. So some of this thing that I used for protection, like the railroad spike, it's to get rid of something. And sympathetic magic also does attraction to attract something. So like the acorns are a real good example of that because they're abundant, they're good food, they feed a lot of animals. So they represent wealth and abundance, and also the strength of the oak tree.
You heard it right here. If you need a money spell, acorns is the ticket.
There you go. Carry one in your pocket when you go to that job interview or when you're looking for a promotion.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I'm glad that you put that in there while going to a job interview. You're putting this acorn in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool. Yeah.
You got to act in accord. You can't just sit home and go, gee, I wish some money had fallen in my lap. You have to do something along with the witchcraft, the magic, the folk magic to bring about that which you desire to manifest. You can't just go, oh, gee, I wish that this would come to me. No, you have to do something to bring it about. But the witchcraft gives you a little extra help.
Well, we're getting close to rest of the hour, and I've really enjoyed having you on the show, and you've given me a different perspective of witches in our community that aren't necessarily well. Your tradition is well different, and I think different is great, and I think it's much needed, and I really like a lot of the things that you've said so far.
Thank
I can
you.
tell that you're really well researched, and I really like that. My last question, I'd like to ask you, within the pagan community as a whole, and I know that you seem pretty active in your area, and in actually pretty countrywide too. Like around the United States, you're involved in a lot of different functions with people. Um,
Somewhat.
in the craft itself, or paganism, and especially in America, what do you think that we should be focusing on?
I think that we need to keep our eyes on community and the environment because those are the two most important, most crucial things that we need to maintain. The environment is in trouble. So we need to act in such a way, not only magically, but in how we live. Looking at the products we buy, looking at the garbage we discard or recycle, looking at things that aren't necessarily sustainable, like fuel. Um, and then work with others within our community to teach them to network. Everybody has good things that they can do, and to advance the community. Everybody has skills, everybody has talents to bring to the table. So, yeah, try and interact with your community, not just your local pagan community, but your greater community as well.
Do you have any last words that you would like to tell our viewers?
Oh my. Well, I'd like to see them once again get out in nature, even if it's just a picnic or sitting outside reading a book or looking up in the trees and looking at the beautiful leaves or, going for a little walk or sitting outside in a park and watching the birds. Because you can learn a lot from nature. It's very peaceful, very healing. So I was called when I was a little kid. I was called the nature nut. So and I haven't grown out of that.
I'm going with that. We're all nature nuts on Witchcraft TV. Keep it right here on www.witchcrafttv.online. Prestigious author and pagan and Welsh witch AC Fisher-Aldag. Please check her out on Amazon. Llewellyn, she's got some good stuff cooking up. And hopefully we can have you back. Keep it right here on Witchcraft TV.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you for having me.
And keep backstage. I'd like to talk to you a bit.
Okay.